The stupidest president in American history backed down again. The only convicted felon to serve as president of the United States backed down.
The last time we tried this tariff policy, we got 10 years of the Great Depression. This is really stupid public policy, and there's no...
During his second presidential term, Donald Trump has pursued an economic policy so radical and unconventional that it has fundamentally torn up the established rulebook on global trade. His decision to impose sweeping tariffs on over 180 countries and territories is not just a policy choice. It is a defining feature of his presidency and a central pillar of his Make America Wealthy Again agenda. This aggressive strategy has not only led to months of economic chaos and severely undermined business confidence in the United States, but it has also brought the world to the brink of a major financial crisis. As a crucial 3-month pause on many of these tariffs nears its expiration, experts in economics and international relations have voiced their gravest fears. They universally argue that Trump's unworkable and absurd policies are set to create even more instability and could plunge the global economy into a state of profound and unprecedented turmoil. This dramatic shift represents a profound ideological break from decades of bipartisan support for free trade and a globalized economy, marking a new and perilous chapter in international relations. The sheer scale of the tariffs, which have affected an astonishing number of nations and a vast array of goods, has created a ripple effect of uncertainty and fear throughout financial markets worldwide. A decades-long embrace of protectionism and its chaotic execution. Donald Trump's belief in the power of tariffs is not a recent or opportunistic development. It is a deeply held conviction that he has championed for nearly 40 years. As far back as 1990, in an interview with Playboy magazine, he declared that foreign nations were ripping our country apart through unfair trade practices. This sentiment has been a cornerstone of his economic worldview ever since. On the campaign trail in 2024, he famously called the word tariff the most beautiful word in the dictionary, a sentiment that captures the core of his protectionist ideology. While his first term saw the introduction of some tariffs, they were minor in scope compared to the sweeping measures of his second. This long-standing commitment to protectionism provides a vital context for understanding the current crisis. His consistency on this issue, despite widespread criticism from mainstream economists, highlights the deeply personal nature of his economic philosophy and his unwavering belief that tariffs are the key to national prosperity. The difference between his first and second terms is not in his belief, but in the scale of its execution. On April 2nd, in an event dubbed Liberation Day, Trump stood on the White House lawn to announce a series of new tariffs that would be imposed on dozens of U.S. trading partners. He framed this move as a necessary response to what he considers a national emergency, the country's significant trade deficit, where the U.S. imports far more goods than it exports. However, this rationale has been heavily criticized by the economic community as both flawed and dangerous. Nobel laureate Paul Krugman described the resulting situation as chaos, while economist Warwick McKibben highlighted the policy's self-defeating logic. McKibben used a striking analogy, stating that Trump's concept of reciprocal tariffs is akin to a person punching themselves in the face because someone else has punched them. This powerfully illustrates the widespread view that these policies are not just ineffective, but fundamentally self-destructive and economically irrational. The chaotic nature of the administration's trade strategy became apparent in the weeks that followed the announcement. The president's approach was wildly inconsistent, as he would back down from, escalate, and de-escalate tariffs with little to no clear pattern. This erratic behavior led many policy experts to question whether any coherent strategy existed at all. Evan Medeiros, who served as a chief advisor on Asia-Pacific affairs to President Barack Obama, commented that there's nothing about Donald Trump's policymaking that looks even remotely well thought out. He suggested that the policies are not based on a detailed plan, but rather on a long-held, deeply ingrained belief that U.S. trading partners are cheating and that tariffs are the only viable solution. The sheer unpredictability of these decisions has created an environment of extreme uncertainty for businesses both in the U.S. and around the world, making long-term planning virtually impossible. The lack of a predictable framework has stifled investment, complicated supply chains, and left corporations and governments alike struggling to respond to an ever-changing landscape of trade rules. This has resulted in a tangible decline in business confidence and a palpable sense of unease across global markets. The controversial architect behind the tariffs and a crisis averted. A key figure and a major influence on Trump's trade policy is a senior counselor for trade and manufacturing, Peter Navarro. Navarro is a highly controversial individual with a history of extreme views and legal issues. He was a central figure in promoting the baseless claim that the 2020 election was stolen and was sentenced to 4 months in prison for contempt of Congress after refusing to comply with a subpoena during the investigation into the January 6 Capitol attacks. Originally a Democrat, Navarro's career has been defined by his aggressive stance against China, which is publicly labeled as the world's largest pirate nation and its biggest drug dealer. His credibility has been questioned, most notably by Australian academic Tessa Moore-Suzuki, who revealed that Navarro had invented a fictitious author, Ron Vara, an anagram of his last name, to cite in at least 15 instances across 5 of his books. Despite these issues, Navarro's influence on the president is significant. Economic historian Sir Neil Ferguson noted that Navarro, whom he called a radical protectionist and perhaps the only economist in the world who agrees with Trump's idea of reciprocal tariffs, has direct access to the president's ear, allowing him to push his agenda forward. Navarro's proximity to power and his unwavering advocacy for protectionist policies have made him a central and often polarizing figure in the administration's economic policy. His unconventional and often discredited views stand in stark contrast to the consensus of the economic establishment, yet they have found a receptive audience in the Oval Office, giving his radical ideas immense weight. The announcement of these sweeping tariffs sent shockwaves through global financial markets, with the U.S. bond market experiencing a significant sell-off. This was a clear and dire warning that investors were losing confidence and viewed U.S. government bonds as increasingly risky assets. Professor McKibben stated that the moment the bond markets started to rattle, it was a clear signal that the global economy was on the edge of a cliff, and that a full-blown financial disaster would have rapidly spread across the globe. This was a moment of immense peril, where the theoretical risks of Trump's policies suddenly became a very real and imminent threat to the stability of the entire global financial system. The sell-off was a powerful market rebuke, indicating a loss of faith in the economic judgment of the American administration and raising the specter of a domino effect of economic collapses. This impending crisis was only narrowly averted on April 9th, thanks to a fortuitous event: Peter Navarro's absence from the Oval Office. According to Sir Neil Ferguson, key cabinet members, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, seized this opportunity. They confronted the president, urgently warning him that he had to postpone these tariffs because we're about to blow up the global financial markets. Following this high-stakes meeting, Trump announced a temporary 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs, stating that he would use this time to negotiate individual trade deals. However, this pause was not universal. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, cars, and automotive parts remained in effect. Furthermore, the administration simultaneously escalated its trade war with China, placing a massive 145% tariff on Chinese imports. In retaliation, China imposed its own 125% tariff on U.S. goods, intensifying the economic conflict between the world's 2 largest economies.